What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Cafe and Views. Today we went to Supa Coffee and we got their Dr. Dre. Let's talk about the shop. The outside of the shop, it's nothing too spectacular. It's kind of like a bland shop and you might miss it if you don't look out for the decal that says Supa outside. But when you walk into the shop, it's a predominantly music inspired coffee shop. There's a lot of different Dr. Dre and music, vinyls, decals, little figurines that pertain to the music industry. They have a lot of different foods, drinks. They also have a biggie, a figurine. It's definitely a coffee shop you want to check out if you're into the music industry. So their menu is also pretty extensive. They have a lot to choose from. A lot of the coffees that you would get have a name that pertain to music. It's definitely more of like a fun, outgoing type of coffee shop, not on a really busy road. It's not in an area that a lot of tourists and a lot of people usually go to, so you kind of have to go out of your way to go to the coffee shop. There's no seating inside and there's no seating outside, so it's more so a grab and go coffee shop, or you could just enjoy the atmosphere and maybe drink the coffee quickly while you're there. Aesthetically, Supa Coffee is going to get a 4.5 out of 5. Let's talk about acidity. So the coffee is not really giving me a sweet vibe. It's more so kind of on the sour side. Even with the ingredients that went into it, I'm kind of getting more so of that espresso than anything else. Hibiscus tea is kind of getting covered up by the espresso, and the almond milk is not really sticking out as much as it should be. It kind of gives off that citrusy vibe, but it's really toned down. All the fruity notes are toned down. It's more so the sour notes that are sticking out. The almond milk is kind of covering it up, but not as much as other coffees where you can actually taste almond milk, oat milk, and things of that nature. Even the ice in this coffee is toning down the espresso and it's taken away from the flavor. It's not sharp, it's not lively. It's probably more so mellow if I would give it a category, but I wouldn't really put this into any one of those categories because it doesn't really do much for me. The impression is not there. At first sip, I didn't fall in love. I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, the presentation was there and the boba was there, but just the overall feeling of the coffee just didn't hit right. I didn't get any fruity notes. I didn't get any real ingredients besides the espresso. For acidity, I'm gonna put this at a 1.5 out of 5. Let's talk about aroma. This coffee has a better aroma than it does any sort of flavor or feeling to it. The aroma smells pretty sweet. The boba included, the espresso, the almond milk, the tea. It's giving a nice subtle aroma, but it's not as prominent as other coffees would be. The aroma is kind of pleasant. It's not really attracting me for more. It's not super pleasant, but for a coffee that just is pretty basic, it is giving off a decent aroma. It is not a head turner. It's not a crowd pleaser. It's just enough to provide something extra to go along with the coffee. The only thing I could really smell is like a sweetened almond milk. Anything else is just getting covered up, so the aroma and the flavor are kind of different than each other, and I'm not able to taste the coffee off the smell. It's not providing a strong enough aroma. The ingredients just don't really hit enough to be able to taste it in your nose or in your mouth. If anything, it's probably more flowery just because of the tea and the tea leaves. That's the only real impression that I can get from this coffee. I don't get a fruity note. I don't get a nutty, chocolatey, or spicy or anything of those nature. It's just a simple tea espresso coffee. It's gonna get the job done if you're just looking for a typical coffee. And the only notes that I'm really getting for aroma is the almond milk, and then there's like a slight espresso smell, but it's really subtle and you really have to think about it. And if you didn't know that espresso was in here, you might actually miss it. But you don't have to lean into the coffee cup too much to really get any indication of the flavors and the aroma. The smell is pretty basic, but the scent that it's giving off, like the projection, it's actually pretty good. It's not too bad. So for how minimal it is, it's doing a really good job at emitting the aroma that it has. For aroma, I'm gonna put this at a 2 out of 5. Let's talk about flavor. Overall, this coffee is balanced just because nothing is really sticking out. At this point, I kind of would want a note to really be more prominent. I'd rather have a coffee where there's one note that's sticking out than just a bland coffee that is just overall rounding together to provide a bare minimum flavor. I would want maybe the espresso to be really vibrant, or maybe the almond milk to stick out, or the hibiscus tea in this coffee to really stick out, but none of that is really doing that. It's all just blending together and creating that subtle flavor. But the flavor is getting enhanced by the aroma just because of the aroma being a lot better than the flavor. The aroma is the highlight of this coffee so far. Smelling it is giving me a better overall experience when I'm tasting it, just because if I just taste it alone, I would not get that experience that I wanted. I would say that this coffee is forgettable just because of the aroma and taste, but presentation wise and the inside of the coffee shop, I wouldn't forget it just because it was the first coffee shop that I went to that was predominantly music based, so I'm definitely not going to forget that. I'm most likely going to go back and try a different coffee and see how well their other coffees are to really get a good depiction of the coffee shop. But for this coffee, flavor is just not there, and I might forget the flavor of this coffee. For flavor, I'm going to put this at a 2 out of 5. Next up is going to be body. It's a really basic water texture. It's probably more so at the beginning of the water texture. It's not anywhere close to soda. The boba is providing a unique texture on your tongue, and it is making the coffee feel heavier, so it is providing an overall heavier weight to it. It's providing more volume to the coffee that the overall feeling of it is lacking. If you don't get any boba and you just get the coffee water flavor, it's gonna feel really bland. It's gonna feel really light on your tongue. There's like a slight, maybe 1 layer thick overall feeling that stays on your tongue. It's not heavy, probably quick, maybe 2 seconds on your tongue, so you're gonna feel the coffee when it's in your mouth for about a second or two, and then it's just gonna go away after that. The ice and the water kind of watered it down, so it took away from that real flavor and texture to it. So for body, because it has boba and it's increasing it, I'm gonna put this at a 2.5 out of 5. Next up, we're gonna be talking about sweetness. I'm not getting any sweetness in this coffee, even just like the espresso. It's not putting it too sour. It's kind of putting it right in the middle point where it's neutral. It's not going in any direction really. The coffee's not changing from sweet to sour. It's just maintaining that nice neutral point. And in the beginning, when I was first tasting the coffee, it was slightly sweeter, but then as I was getting towards the middle and the bottom, it just gave me that overall bland flavor. As soon as I mixed the coffee, that's when the flavor started to disappear. Before I mixed it at the top, if I was just drinking it, I was getting more of that flavor. I was getting more aroma, and I was getting an overall better feeling of the coffee. But once you mix the espresso in it and you started changing the chemicals and you started changing the flavor, that's when everything started changing. For sweetness, I'm gonna put this at a 1 out of 5. Next up is gonna be aftertaste. It's still leaving your mouth wet. It's not providing a dry feeling. This coffee, maybe just the espresso might do that, but because it has boba as well, it's still providing a nice coating, a really minimal light layering, but it's still there. It's not hugging your mouth and it's not really leaving a trail. It's just a quick in your mouth and done. It's not lingering, it's not sticking around. It just provides a light layer on your tongue, and then it dissipates like the coffee was never in your mouth at all. Because it has boba, I want to keep going into it, but if it didn't have boba, I would not keep wanting to drink this coffee. I'm not gonna get rid of it, but if I was just doing a taste testing and I was offered this coffee or a bigger size, I would not get it. I would just stick to that sample. It's maintaining that neutral point. It's not sweet or sour, so it's not really picking a side. But it is smooth though. It's not rough like a super sour coffee. It's just not going down your throat harsh. It's not leaving any spiciness in your throat. For aftertaste, I'm gonna put this at a 2 out of 5. Next up is gonna be complexity. I'm gonna mix the complexity of the inside of the shop and the coffee together. The variety in coffee, it's pretty basic. It has 3 ingredients, so it's not really complex there. But in terms of looks, how it looked, because it had boba in it, it was definitely unique. I haven't had a coffee with boba in it, and I was never offered the boba. So this was the first shop that I was really offered any sort of additives that provided a different kind of texture to it. The looks, complex. The taste, not so complex. So with those two, it's kind of balancing it out. So it's like right in the middle. But the coffee shop, just how small it is, but how full it was with music and entertainment and things you could buy and just overall see and enjoy your coffee. Just walking into the coffee shop, you're gonna wanna buy a coffee. It's gonna attract you for coffee. It's good publicity. You're gonna listen to the music. It's gonna make you look at the menu and wanna buy the Dr. Dre coffee. You should definitely check it out. It might provide a different experience being at the shop, listening to the music, drinking the coffee. So your perception might be different than mine. It does blend together well because how simple it is. I would want something to stick out more, but it doesn't do that. And then the beginning, middle, and the end of the coffee, it's still the same. It overall rounds together real well. It's like a circle ball. It's just perfectly round. For complexity, because of the coffee shop and the coffee, I'm gonna put this at a 4 out of 5. Let's talk about balance. It is balanced, nothing sticking out. The espresso was sticking out a lot more in the beginning. Then I mixed it and it started mixing with the almond milk and then the tea, changed the looks from a blue to the brown type of look. That almond milk kind of covered up the espresso taste, and it went from a predominantly espresso heavy coffee to just an overall rounded coffee. I would love for the espresso to be a lot more out there. At least it would give it some sort of kick and flavor and texture to it, but it's just overall too balanced. And it's not consistent because of that sweetness in the beginning and then having to mix the coffee to get that balanced feeling. It doesn't alternate from sweet to sour, it just alternates between sweet and neutral. For balance, I'm gonna put this at a 1.5 out of 5. Let's talk about forgiveness. I'm not gonna forgive this coffee. I'm not gonna have the high points forgive the low points. This coffee deserves what it gets because how it changes and how it kind of ruins flavor and the aroma as you mix the coffee together. So the high points don't forgive the low points. Any points that I give are sticking, and no points are gonna raise other points. Just even the complexity of the coffee shop and the complexity of the coffee are not going to bump up any score. So for forgiveness, I'm gonna put this at a 1 out of 5. Lastly, versatility. Because this coffee is pretty basic and it's not in your face and it doesn't provide any sort of really great experience, I'm gonna say that it's versatile, that you could grab it at any point during the day, any point during the week. You wouldn't grab this coffee for those nice moments. You'd grab this coffee maybe Monday to Friday if you're going to work and you just want something simple. You don't want any taste or flavor to really stick out. But if you want a little bit more like a pep in your day, definitely get the boba, because it's just gonna make you play around with the coffee a little bit more, provide a little bit of a better experience instead of just getting the water from it, just having something to chew on, just providing a different kind of experience and a different journey to it. For versatility, I'm gonna put this at a 4 out of 5. Overall, the Dr. Dre Superfly from Super Coffee got a 21.5 out of 50, or about a 43% out of 100. Thank you so much for watching Cafe and Views, where we went to Super Coffee and we got their Dr. Dre Superfly. Make sure you tell your parents about Cafe and Views